What causes anxiety to get out of hand? Tim, we just heard that anxiety is a marker for important stuff.
It's exactly.
I thought you would, because I know that you actually say that in your notes for your workshops and stuff. I thought I'd bring that up.
I think you're right.
That's wonderfully clear, thank you. So what causes anxiety? I know we were touching on it, but can we get just a little bit more detail here? What causes, in a very logical, very understandable way, what causes anxiety to get out of hand?
The way it tends to start, certainly in my experience personally, and working with people with this, is that something big comes into your life that you've got to take care of. It might be health, it might be a situation at work. It could be, like you say, you've got to speak to people for something coming up. It just sits there not having anything done about it. An example would be, I saw a client once who had a trial coming up for something they didn't do in 6 months' time. They were feeling tremendous, constant levels of anxiety about the upcoming trial, but they didn't want to be existing with that horrible feeling in their chest for 6 months. All their mind is doing there is saying, this is really, really important. It might be the most important thing in our life for the next few years. So we can't just forget about it. We can't just throw it away and ignore it because it's too important. What happens then is that crew members whose job it is to look after this activity starts to shout louder and louder because nothing's really being done. We're just sitting there getting on with our lives without addressing it directly. But 6 months out, he'd done everything he needed to do. He prepped everything, he got his brief. He didn't really have to think about this until a day or two before the actual trial when he would need to get his head in the game. But you've still got this crew member saying, no, this is the most important thing in our lives and I'm going to keep shouting about it. Then what happens is you've got all these other crew members on the ship who have fairly mundane things to do, like remember to get the shopping, remember to put the bins out, stuff like that. But then to actually get heard, they have to shout even louder than the bit that's really shouting. Otherwise it will get ignored and it will just get forgotten. What you got now is a whole load of crew members shouting really, really loudly at the captain of the ship, at your conscious mind, bringing it into your conscious awareness. Before you know it, you've got no idea what you're anxious about because it's just a ship full of people shouting at you. Then, as a result of this, you might get told, you have anxiety. Your anxiety has now escalated and now you have chemicals in your brain being created that are causing you to constantly have anxiety. And now you've got a disorder. Then suddenly you've got someone else in there shouting about your health, about your mental health and the worries that you have. Will this anxiety ever leave? Because sometimes what happens is we'll get to the other side of that important thing and we'll still have those high levels of anxiety because everyone's got used to shouting now and no one's going to just decide to whisper when everyone else in the room is shouting. They just keep doing it at this level. What becomes the biggest thing you're anxious about is the constant level of anxiety, even though the big thing you were anxious about has now passed. I had a client actually that did exactly this. She came to see me. She'd been diagnosed with health anxiety and generalised anxiety. She was told she had a disorder. She'd been put on medication to treat it. She'd had a course of CBT. She saw me as a last resort, which I'm okay about. I don't seem to be many people's first choice. They don't say, there's something wrong, I'm going to go and see the hypnotist. They tend to go to the doctor first, which is fair enough. But it had started a couple of years earlier and it was a really good time in her life. She was doing brilliantly, in fact. Her business was flying and she was winning awards and she was getting big contracts, doing better than she could have ever imagined. But as a result, she was working quite hard, doing quite long hours. She was out with her friends one day in town and for whatever reason, she hadn't had much sleep, she hadn't eaten very well, she hadn't taken enough fluids, so physically she was a bit run down. She started to feel ill. She started to feel her heart beating a bit faster, breathing getting a bit erratic, feeling a bit dizzy, and she started to really worry about what this was. Before she knew it, she'd amplified it and talked herself into a panic attack. The ambulance was called. Panic attacks feel like you're dying, don't they? So she had a really big scare health-wise. What then happened was she went to the doctor. The doctor said it's anxiety, and she started to worry about her anxiety. The biggest thing in her life that she was worrying about was that now she'd made herself ill and she now had anxiety that she would just have to manage for the rest of her life. The first thing you've got to do in those situations is understand the anxiety comes and goes. It's normal, but if we manage it correctly, it shouldn't be any higher than anyone else's anxiety. I think the danger here is that we believe when we're told we have something, we will always have it.